And this is our first public event, and we're thrilled that friends and new people have come to join us, particularly because we have our visitors from Uppsala who will be with us actually in person next week. So how did this come about? Book at Lunchtime, Monstrosity. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Christine Gerard, Director of Torch, and I would like to introduce my counterpart in Sweden, Claes Fredrik Helgesson, Director of Circus. Now, Circus and Torch are both interdisciplinary research centres, and we formed a collaboration. I think we started in 2023, in which we brought together researchers from across different disciplines to work together as the culture and creativity cluster. And this involved colleagues from a very wide range of fields. They do really cool things in Uppsala. They have a gaming campus as well. So this has been gaming, AI, social sciences, arts, film, cultural studies, music, gender research, informatics, and media, and many other areas. And we've been carrying on this collaboration in person and online, and we're just on the cusp of meeting again. All this sounds like a lot of fun, and it has been. But what has been the point and focus of our working together and deepening our connections over time? We've been drawn together to explore some really big themes, including ideas of what it means to be human, to be more than human or other than human, and how this shapes our creative responses. This is very pertinent as we are in the Schwarzman Centre for the Humanities. One of the big questions, which you have seen on the billboards, is what does it mean to be human? And I think this collaboration speaks to that. More than human creativity involves us considering our role in the Anthropocene, as well as other forms of creativity generated, for example, by AI. And so we've done quite a lot of work in that field. And we are exploring a range of projects and outputs in pairs as a large group. But this first production, our pamphlet, focuses on monstrosity and how this is conceived. I think quite a lot of the conversation is about AI, but also more traditional, cultural and historical histories of difference. For example, neurodivergence, psychiatric illness, anything that requires us to encounter other and perhaps fearful versions of ourselves. And I think above all, we benefited from being able to explore the playful and unruly aspects of the imagination with our colleagues from Uppsala, engaging in work that transcends disciplinary boundaries. So today we celebrate Monstrosity, a volume which explores the porous boundaries between the digital, the material, the biological, the artificial, the normal, the abnormal, through storytelling, both human and AI generated. And I'd like to hand over to Claes Fredrik in Uppsala to see if you'd like to add some words.
Yes, can you hear me fine in Uppsala? No, in Oxford, sorry.
Yep.
Yes, you're nodding. Yes, good. So, welcome to, on behalf of Circus, I'm Claes Fredrik Helgesson, Director of Circus and part of the Circus staff, who have had the pleasure to work with this group of researchers from Oxford and Uppsala, as well as, of course, the Torch staff. As we are here today celebrating this pamphlet, I would like to highlight it not as much as a deliverable, as you say in research project vernacular, but more as a part of an ongoing conversation. So this piece, and Christine alluded to it, is the result of new conversation and is part of still ongoing conversations, and we will pick up them again next week. And I think good research always needs to be part of important conversations with relevant contemporaries and with the past. And there's this saying, attributed to Isaac Newton, standing on the shoulders of giants. And I can see that kind of image, but I've always wondered, how do you talk to one another if you do that kind of acrobatics? How do you kind of bend and talk to the whisper in the ear and listen and so on? So I think that maybe conversations is a more kind of fitting metaphor for research. And I would like to read a little bit quote from, I think is a kind of an Oxford friend, Theodore Zeldin. He writes in a tiny book called Conversation, which I think is it's a general about conversation, but I think it's very fitting for research and this kind of research. And I quote then, "Conversation is a meeting of minds with different memories and habits." You could read it in disciplinarity, of course. When minds meet, they don't just exchange facts. They transform them, reshape them, draw different implications from them, engage in new trains of thought. Conversation doesn't just reshuffle the cards, it creates new cards. And I think that the pamphlet here we have is a very kind of fitting example of that. So, despite of me being a circus director or part of the center called Circus, I do think conversation is a better metaphor of what we are doing here than the metaphor of acrobatics. So, Isaac Newton, that's how it is. So to paraphrase one of the lines towards the end of the booklet on monstrosity, research is a space to converse otherwise. And I would like to congratulate the cluster to do this so well, with energy, ingenuity, and with a good tolerance for ambiguity and exploration. So, thank you.
Thank you. So we will begin, I think, with our first reading, which is by the piece by Sarah Lyne Bowman, "The Ladies of the Troubled Tides," and this will be read by Professor Wes Williams, Professor Matthew Reynolds, and by Professor Catherine Eccles. And I will hand over to you guys. Thank you.
Before we read it, perhaps I could say that one of the things we decided was that we would read each other's work rather than our own work. And that's part of the conversation ethic that's just been elaborated. So Sarah Lynn is in fact over there in Sweden, but we're now voicing her writing, which you'll find on pages 10 to 11 through to 12. We are the monsters, the ladies of the troubled tides. You have painted us, written us, fantasized about us, demonized us, destroyed us, and yet we persist. You write stories, make films, and play games in which you confront and overcome us. Are we simply flights of your fancy, objects of forbidden desire, or cautionary tales? Or is our existence external to you, therefore representing something you must conquer, tame, or domesticate? Hear our song.
I am Selkie. My skin is silky, soft, luxurious to you. To me, my skin is freedom, my connection to my beloved sea, my kin, and the endless mysteries of the depths undefined by your human structures. You see my skin first, not me. You lure me to land with promises of kisses and tenderness. You stroke my skin and praise its unique beauty. I shapeshift to please you, to let you in. Then you steal it from me. You hide my freedom away. With it, you take my power to fight back, the viciousness within that scares you so. You keep me content, compliant, and breeding. And for a time, that is enough, as you are fascinating to me, land walker. But eventually, I must be free again. I will leave you, and that is the worst thing you can imagine. Your little world being too small for me.
I am Mermaid. My body is a mystery to you. Part of me so familiar, and the other part utterly monstrous. I'm a contradiction to you. Part air, part water, part land, part deepest sea. Can you ever decipher me without changing my nature? I care for myself, combing my hair, gazing in the mirror. You see these labours of beauty as done for your benefit. To you, I always exist in a fixed place, awaiting your desire or fear, preparing for you to arrive and solve my puzzle. Sometimes I rescue you and other objects from the land that delight me. You're a curiosity for my undersea cabinet. If you depart, I may seek to follow, but one cannot be part woman, part monster. My sisters mock me for this choice. I give up my voice until I can conform to what you need me to be in your palace of controlled, tamed beauty.
I am Siren. I am from the sea and its mouthpiece. I represent the mysterious, the lure to the unknown, to what lies past life, past land, past the world you know and conquer, past the animals you can shear and domesticate. Sometimes I have wings and can evade you. Sometimes I have a tail and can dive deep out of your grasp. You cannot control me, and it terrifies you. My voice is your bane, for it lures you to reveal your deepest desires and compels you to surrender to me. To surrender to me would be to abandon your manly power that you fought so hard to assert in your land wars of dominance and kingly aspirations. To surrender would mean allowing the feminine to engulf you, to overwhelm you, to drop you into submission. I can feel how deeply you long to submit from leagues away. My song searches for this longing and tethers you to me and my shadowy tides. You fear me the most out of all the ladies of the troubled tides, for I might just decide to devour. I fear you yearn for rest most of all.
Yes, cover your ears. Continue your conquests and your endless search for yet more and more power. We persist whether or not you hide from us. The water is patient and inevitable.
And now I would like to introduce from Uppsala Filmo Verhagen, who will be reading a piece by somebody who is present here, Rob Laidlow, in an act of ventriloquism. And this is a piece, reading number 2, on non-human AI.
Yes, thank you. I will read an abbreviated version, but you can read along. Imagine that the Earth has received a message from an extraterrestrial civilization, and that this message is full to the brim with alien culture, images of artifacts, music and poetry. It is very much like our own Voyager spacecraft, which is currently embarked on a lonely journey in interstellar space, carrying its precious payload of 2 golden discs, etched with sounds from this blue planet. Sadly, Voyager will probably never encounter an alien civilization. It would take 700 million years for it to reach the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, and it isn't even headed towards that one. Let's imagine that, like Voyager, our extraterrestrial messenger has convenient graphics, telling us how to listen to the music that's on it. Experiencing this non-human approach to creativity might have an incredible effect on how we think about art and what it means to be human, but it's unlikely we would feel it was any more a threat to human creative work than the diverse, beautiful, and strange birdsong we hear in nature. Well, there is already a non-human intelligence capable of catalyzing profound insights into creativity. But that isn't the lens we usually imagine it through: artificial intelligence. non-human qualities have generally been suppressed when designing creative AI in favor of systems that emulate human creative processes using human data to create plausibly human results. A non-human approach to designing and using AI systems could provide a radical new perspective on this technology. This approach might draw on how we already engage creatively with other non-human sounds, like animal song and astrophysical noise. By deliberately highlighting AI's inherent non-human qualities, we might be able to disentangle what AI actually is from how it has been used and imagined recently. This is, in turn, could provide a critical new perspective on issues such as whether creative AI can be ethical and its relationship to existing human work and copyright. What are these non-human qualities? You are probably already familiar with some. AI's ability to recall vast amounts of knowledge, its tendency to create astonishing connections between disparate ideas, its ability to speak 100 languages at once quite comfortably, the speed at which it can complete a task, and so on. There are others, often hidden beneath the surface, the kinds of qualities that designers often suppress. AI finds creating music with human-like long-term structural coherence difficult. Unless actively stopped, it can have a tendency to create its own languages we can't understand. The way it listens to sounds is fundamentally different to how we do. These qualities, and many more, are traditionally viewed to be solved in order to successfully create a human-like AI. But maybe we should treat them as positive characteristics to be highlighted, reinforced, and focused on. What kind of art would that inspire? What new modes of thought could it create that can then be applied to other areas of our lives? By imagining, building, and using creative AI that reacts some, or all, of that triumvirate of human centrism, it's possible to do something a little more interesting and inspiring with this technology than endlessly rehashing what we already have. Strangely, by embracing the non-human, perhaps even the monstrous, we might find ourselves much more at ease with this technology.
And I should like to add at this point that we'll have an instance of a musical performance with AI by Rob Laidlow, the author of that piece, at the end. I meant to flag this up earlier on. Anybody who has been to one of these before will know how interesting and compelling it is. So we're excited about this. So hang in to the end. It'll be worth it. So now I think we'd like to have a discussion between us in Oxford and our colleagues in Uppsala. We'd like to take it in turns, I think. And I'd really like to just get to grips with what my colleagues have got out of this collaboration, the kinds of things that have been exciting and different and you know, where they think it will take them and what they've learned. And I think that I would like to start just by asking some fairly simple questions. So the first question I thought I might ask is, how has this collaboration enriched or enhanced your experience of interdisciplinarity and working across disciplines? And I'll begin with people in Oxford, if that's okay. So, Wes, thoughts?
Yeah. I think for me, the main new aspect of this, but also one of the most exciting aspects of this, has been this sort of, it's in the title really, culture and creativity. It's in the interdisciplinary, not just as different disciplines within the university working together in a space, because I'm kind of used to that in Torch already and in other aspects of my work. But this particular cluster with the circus crew has actually enabled us also within Oxford to work together creatively much more than we have done thus far. And at one level, that simply means allowing oneself to write differently. So, for example, in here, there's a short story here, which I wrote, and I've not published a short story before. I've written them before, but I've not published them before. I've written a lot about monsters and monstrosity, but never actually committed my voice to a monster in that way. And that may not sound like a lot, but it actually is a lot for academic writers to sort of venture into that space in ways that... I don't want to say it's a safe space because it's not, and that's part of the excitement of it. But that is testing the boundaries of one's own discipline in relation to creativity. And very much like Klaus Friedrich was saying earlier about a conversation within oneself, but also with others, that means that there are new cards in the pack, and that there are new kinds of shapes possible to your own work and to collaborative work. So I'd say it's in the culture and creativity bit of the cluster that I've found it most enriching for this in this collaboration.
Thank you, Catherine.
So I feel like a veteran of interdisciplinarity because I think it's responsible for my whole career. I'm a literature and history graduate who's sort of always been a disciplinary fence sitter. So I feel very practiced at it, and I leapt at the chance of joining this collaboration because it feels like something I always practiced at. In fact, it's been completely different from any of the other interdisciplinary work that I've ever done. And I think that's because it was so beautifully unrestrained, unconstrained. The mission was simply to work together, and that could take any form. Both Christine and Klaus Friedrich have been so wonderful at embracing the unruly, embracing the circuitous routes to creativity, to writing, to collaboration. And so without being structured, without having to think about a paper or a grant application, although all of those things have come to pass, it's been in the experimentation, the permission to just play, to just talk, and to think about the things that interest us and the ways in which we could take that further together. That has been the real gift for me, and it's completely intoxicating. I don't think I can work without this experience being part of that thinking ever again.
Yeah, just to echo that, I mean, because I've done quite a lot of interdisciplinary things before, always with a purpose, and it was just really surprising. I mean, and kind of like, in some ways worrying, but mainly just sort of very, very nice to be in this space. Because actually, in order to be included, we'd had to, at least I think we had anyway, we'd had to sort of express some purpose or some kind of idea of what we should be doing. But when we got into the space, certainly in my case, that dropped away, and what we ended up talking about and the ideas that I ended up pursuing were really quite different from what I'd said I imagined that I would want to pursue through the collaboration. So that freedom, and then just thinking about ways in which that's good and ways in which that's, I think I've been thinking quite a lot about sort of mobility and moving between different kinds of spaces, which is to say the sort of thing we've been talking about. That's lovely. About how do you move towards something that's more directed? And I think the sense of sort of moving the way that can come in. Christine, you were a little bit strict about this at one point. That's sort of, okay, what's this leading to? So that comes in as a kind of pressure, and you think, oh no, but then you think, oh no, actually I can rise to this now as a result of this interactive conversation that we've had. So I think that the feeling of sort of moving between different ways of being, so a more free and not goal-directed one, to then, what am I going to do with this? And then maybe in some respects sort of going back into my discipline from this space. So to me, the sense of moving between different ways of being was really important. Another thing I really enjoyed is that in an interdisciplinary space, I mean, it's obvious really, but no one is an expert. And so then that means in the whole space, everyone is an expert in something, but no one's an expert in the whole space. And that means that you're behaving much. So to me, it kind of connects with the work of the humanities of just engaging with people, not experts. So the humanities is just part of civil society and just conversation. because you're explaining something to someone who doesn't know anything about it. So to me, there's a kind of radical continuity between interdisciplinary humanities and, as it were, socially committed humanities, because you're stepping out of your professional identity into what is, in a way, just a space where you're functioning more as a thinking person rather than as someone with a particular kind of expertise. And just finally, then the third thing that was sort of especially fresh for me, so my work has always been about books and reading, so it's been quite cerebral. I haven't really done much, and the work I'm doing now is trying to bring that expertise and connection with AI, but I've never sort of done much thinking about embodiment and interaction. And one of the exciting things about some colleagues here, but also colleagues in Uppsala, is working with role play or working with physical interfaces between people and machines. How do you do that? So for me, sort of the sense of sort of the person being embodied as kind of something to think with, and sort of feeling as something to think with, was something that was kind of fresh and really stimulating for me in the conversations that we had.
And could I just add as well, while I'm thinking about it, what we haven't mentioned so much as well is the opportunity to actually spend time in Uppsala with colleagues, which was just plain weird, actually. I mean, I think there are certain spaces, not the colleagues, but there's something about being in a different university which has some quite sort of powerful spaces in it, including, for example, time spent in the anatomical theatre, which is where they used to dissect, and that is very strange. Circus has been in an observatory, which is strangely parallel to our observatory, but their offices are in this space. So you found yourself in some quite dark spaces and quite sort of constricted. The voices would echo around these spaces, and I think that there's something imaginatively quite powerful about being immersed in other people's research spaces when you're so used to being in this one, which is for me one of the big takeaways that I'll always think of Uppsala actually in terms of those spaces, not just ideas, but the actual place itself. Yeah.
I wonder if you're thinking about that now, partly because this is our first meeting in this place, because this is a strange space too for us. I mean, it's familiar, but it's also strange. I think there's some of that in there too. But
now, actually, I should hand over to Cecilia, Lena, and Klaas to ask the same question. Really, I should like to know how this collaboration has enriched or enhanced your experience of interdisciplinarity, and we know that you are the veterans of interdisciplinarity. So.
Well, I think for me, a lot of this experience has been about sort of challenging one's own expectations of one's own discipline and one's own sort of academic work. I mean, traditionally one is so there's always a certain level of being instrumental when it comes to doing research and to come up with new ideas, and clearly one activates more one half of the brain than the other. I don't know which one it is that's more instrumental than the other, but being sort of thrust into this kind of social experiment, I guess, invariably activates the other half that you may not realize that you have or that you've suppressed for a long time, and it allows these kind of new ideas to percolate and new ideas to come forth, and clearly this type of writing that you've done here is not something like that normally do work that even you guys capable of doing. So I guess my relationship with boundaries, not just disciplinary boundaries, but just kind of general sense of who I am, what I'm capable of, and what it's like to do this creative stuff with lovely new people. Some that I've known from before, and some that are entirely new. I think is a really healthy experience. I think for us as academics, because we're so trained to stay in our hold, that this is something that should be prescribed to everyone. I think with certain intervals.
Yeah, I mean, if I can build on that, and I think I agree with what everyone said so far. I mean, it has been an incredibly playful experience that has been so wonderful in it. Having all of this space to just play around, try things, see what works, what doesn't work, fix to the wall. But also it's been an experience in what slow research could be, like in this time where we have this constant acceleration of publications, of research rounds, of like speed in academia and metrics. Having had this playful space where there have been no pressures of like that type of outcomes, where we have been allowed to do slow research. That has been a fabulous experience to me, that's possible, that spaces like that can be created today. And what can come out of those sorts of thought processes that are allowed to circulate, to sort of take time to be developed. And I think that this book is a really nice case of sort of slow research. And also the importance, what Christine said, the importance of space. Still today, a lot of the book is about AI, but the importance that physical space makes, right? So that there's the trip to Oxford, and also when the Oxford people came here, and we saw Uppsala in a completely new light. I thought that was fabulous to see what can be made of space and the importance of space, now that impacts research and thought processes. It's been a wonderful experience.
Mm-hmm. I can echo what everyone else has said so far. For me, this has been incredibly important. It's been a space to explore without having the constraint of producing something, sort of an end goal, but to sort of feel my colleagues out, if I may, and see where they're coming from, where they're going, where they're sitting now, what they're doing with the research, from what perspective they're operating from, the kind of spatial constraint that they have as well, and what we have, the sort of boundaries within our university in Sweden as well as in Oxford, and how that implicate also our research and what we can do with it as well. I think also the issue of space and place has been super important, to go to this mythical space that is Oxford. It's been a huge privilege to do that, to understand that space, how the different unit works and how it sits together, but also how teaching works, because we're not only researchers, we are also teachers, and a lot of what we do as researchers into teaching. And can we learn something from each other, different methodologies, and bring our research and research perspective also into teaching? That's been super important to me. I also want to emphasize the materiality and the materials that we have been working with, the collections that we visited, and the conversations that we have had around the material objects and the different spaces that we've been in. I think that's been also super important to me. But the privilege to have the space, to have these conversations, as well as the privilege to explore, I think has been super important. And I want to stress also what you have said about the sort of neoliberal university, where we are so goal-orientated all the time. And this is something completely different. And I think it allows us to be something different within the academy as well.
I shall ask just a couple more questions, I think. I mean, one of them is actually, have there been any surprises? That's a thing that I've got some, but I'd be curious to know what surprises you might have encountered, or things that you might have found out about yourself.
Yeah, so I have a couple, and they relate to discomfort, which is always such an interesting challenge. Role play being one of them. I was very comfortable initially, and then very uncomfortable, and it took quite a lot of unpacking to think about why I was struggling with that so much. And I think my second feeling of discomfort came in the anatomy theatre, because it was so visceral. It was the embodiment. It was so profound. I felt hot and clammy, and I wanted to leave, and I had to really fight with myself to stay there. And I'm so glad I did, because the conversations we had in that space possibly as a result of some of that discomfort that I'm sure others were feeling too, they were so important, and that memory for me is a really strong one. So I think there've been all of this folds into this really wonderful experience. So I promise these are not my takeaways from this experience. But they, in a way, they have become positive experiences because I learned so much about myself in coming through that discomfort.
And Catherine, you helped me to have those feelings, or sort of feel that it was okay to have those feelings, because there was one moment where you said, I feel really unhappy about this, so upset about this, and it was kind of and I hadn't really, typically in an academic environment, it's not straightforward to make that kind of remark, and then suddenly it was, it's okay to go with those feelings and express them, and then that becomes available as something then to think about as part of your reaction to what's being talked about or the experience, and therefore it becomes part of your whole kind of response, and therefore work. Your sort of thinking activity, the feeling feeds into that. So that was a release in a way, a surprise that was also kind of a permission, I guess, to bring that sort of whole aspect of the person into the thinking.
Right.
I think I'll probably go back to the anatomy theatre as well, just to explain to people. There is a kind of rare, still standing wooden, very high, very round anatomy theatre in Uppsala University. It's been reconstructed recently. I'm a bit of a obsessive about anatomy theatres. I work on 16th century anatomy amongst other things, so I wanted to see this place. And we got there, and we had one of the people who's actually worked on the architecture of it with us, who talked us through the reconstruction. And I think it was I'm not sure this is quite a surprise, but it was certainly a very powerful moment where, to pick up on what you were talking about, materiality, where the sort of material presence of history became really, really evident. We put on a little sort of quasi-show, I guess, in there, a discussion, but also made some noises and asked people to do the role play of being an animal in that space where vivisection had taken place and so on. And that then led us to, you don't usually do that at a conference, but we did it because we were sort of allowing ourselves to do it as part of this play. And I think it did generate a new kind of understanding. Historical understanding, but also other kinds of understanding of what it was to be in that kind of space. I think we're all talking about the same space, partly because of what you were saying earlier about material space, the materiality of the objects and the places that we're working in.
Yes, just to add to that, I think it makes you realise that when you're an academic in Oxford, you normally are in control of everything. Unless you've got your lecture to write and you haven't done it, in which case you're often panicking. But there is a sense in which you are in control and you're in familiar places. And I think it's really useful for all of us to place ourselves in new spaces that can provoke unexpected responses, because I think especially if you're doing it in the company of colleagues, actually, because you suddenly think, I'm thinking about something really differently. And it's interesting, you heritage guys, you'll be very familiar with how this works, but it's one of the strengths of moving around, I think, and being in different places, which is so highly valuable, basically. Yeah. I'll hand over the issue of that question to you in Uppsala about any surprises. Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to add that I also discovered that I'd never done role play before. Thank you, Sarah. And I was very embarrassed about having to play a role. But actually, I really got into it, and so did Matthew. We were quite good, actually. And it was funny. So that was actually very liberating in a way. Yeah, I thought. Yes, over to you in Uppsala. Yeah. Surprises.
So I want to. There's this very famous, and perhaps it's been said too much, Swedish line called "Jag visst gör ont när knoppar brister." And I think about that a lot. Basically, it says that it hurts when you grow. whenever you experience growth, it's also painful because it changes you and you turn into something else. And in the poem specifically refers to flowers. And I think that, making this the pamphlet, that was partly painful because it was a very messy process. But something wonderful came out, I think, that is a result of some of that mess, the play, and the acceptance of a certain lack of control, which I think in itself can be very creative. And I think that has been perhaps one of the more surprising things for me.
Well, I think going back to the significance of place again, I think because coming to Oxford, I mean, obviously it's a very peculiar environment in many ways.
Yep.
Academically, not the least, and just sort of walking the streets and just experiencing these really impressive buildings, all these colleges and everything, and just how that kind of affects your thinking a little bit, just being in the atmosphere. And I remember when we were in a guided tour, I think, and we had just gone into, and I'm really terrible at remembering where we are and what's going on. But this is a known character. Well, no, it wasn't the bottle. It was something else. It was something somewhat more anonymous to me. But anyway, so in the middle of it all, I have an 11-year-old daughter who texted me and said, "Where are you now?" And I sent the picture, and she texted back, "Do you realize that you're in the Harry Potter hospital?" And I said, "No." And then there was this kind of deluge of texts and saying, "Are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? And where goes that?" And all this stuff. So that kind of brought me into, okay, so where am I actually? And what there's all this stuff that's embedded into these buildings, fictional and real. I mean, the dissections in Uppsala are obviously very real, and Harry Potter is not. But there's something to, what do all these buildings and streets and environments, what they communicate to us, and how it affects our minds, I think, creatively. So I think that was a surprise. I wasn't aware that I was in that particular hospital.
Yeah. What can I say? Perhaps I wasn't surprised so much. I think it was more a sense of wonder. In the same way, I'm walking the streets and looking at these old buildings, and also wonder meeting these lovely human beings in Oxford, and brilliant researchers as well. So not so much a surprise, but in the same way, it was nice to be taken out of a context and placed into another space and see what this space and place did to sort of my thinking about stuff. So no, I don't think I was surprised. West sometimes surprised me because there was so much that you have done. I'm sorry. but there was like, oh yeah, I've done this play, and no, yeah, I wrote this, and then this monster does this. So sometimes, yeah, West was a bit of a wonder to me and a surprise. It was nice. I look forward to more of that. But no, more a sense of wonder, which was a nice, comfortable treat. Not so much a discomfort, but a nice cozy break from my everyday. And I think those things are important, not just they're not unacademic, but they actually do something to your thinking that is necessary. So it's not only the discomfort that provokes you to do new things, but the comfort can also do the same thing, I think. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Celia. That's very nice. That's good. And well, we know that Wes actually, is an absolute of every kind, and hugely prolific in every way. So now I think we are at 1:30. So we probably, or it's 1:30. Well, yes, it's 12. It's 1:30 our time, and it's tea time your time actually. So you're having cream cakes over there. We thought that we would make time for Rob, basically, if this is okay. because we are really keen to get some of the music involved.
Great.
So if we can hand over to you and your, what's it called again?
Well, I will reveal.
You will reveal it.
Yeah, thank you. That was really, really interesting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. So you heard a bit of my piece, about my written piece earlier, which I was talking a little bit about AI and birdsong. And so I've put together this performance today. This is the first time this has been performed, this particular set, if you like. And possibly the last time. We'll see how it goes. Which is all to do with different views on birdsong and how computers hear and see birdsong. So I'll get to this in a moment, but there's some different types of AI software happening here. So there's one which is called it makes something called a latent space out of the sounds, which means it analyzes, in this case, birdsong, according to lots and lots of different dimensions. So many more things than we can hear as humans. So it might analyze something according to 1,000 dimensions or something like that. And that means that every moment in this set of birdsong recordings is given a number on each of those dimensions. So one sound might be like 10, 100, and so on. So I've made a little map out of this latent space. So as you navigate around this computer space, you're hearing different reconstructions of bird songs, but in very strange ways. It's not intended to sound like a bird, but it's rather applying computational logic to bird song. That's slightly complex, but just imagine it as being a big topographical space in which there's lots of different sounds situated. The other type of sound that you'll hear is a Fourier transformation, which isn't really what we'd call AI today. It's not what OpenAI do, but it is a kind of AI in that it's a computer doing things on its own. And what this means is that you can break down any sound into a constituent number of sine waves, which are multiplied to make that sound. And that's just a physical fact about any sound. And so what I've done here as part of this little recording as well is that at certain points, the bird song that we hear is broken down into its constituent parts, and then some of those parts are removed and removed and removed, and then the sound is sort of distilled, if you like, until it transforms into something quite different to what we might have heard in the first place. And the reason I'm interested in this is because it demonstrates that computers don't hear things in the way that we hear, and when these sounds are distilled, or when you're navigating around these kind of latent space topographical sound maps, it sounds very strange to us, but it's entirely natural and logical to the kinds of algorithms that we've developed. Okay, so that's the algorithmic side of it, in a sense. But we also talked a lot about materiality as well today, and this is something I'm really interested in my work, is how do you interact with these kinds of algorithms in a musical way to be able to express yourself creatively. So it doesn't just feel like you're working with an abstract force, but actually it feels like something like an instrument, or like another improviser you're working with, or like a composer, or like some sort of strange hybrid of these roles. So I've got this instrument, which some of you may have seen before, but if you have seen it before, then it will sound very different today. But anyway, this is called a stacco. You can come and have a look at it later if you want. I don't want to pick it up right now, because it's a bit delicate, and there's only about 6 in the world, and they're all in Iceland, apart from this one. So what this is controlled. It's quite a magical instrument. I didn't design it. I just designed the software side of it. So it uses magnets. It has 4 magnetometers embedded inside it. And those magnetometers track the locations of these magnets. Or really, to be more precise, they track the perturbations of a magnetic field, which I'm causing by manipulating the magnet. And it tracks those perturbations in 3 dimensions. So as I'm manipulating these 4 magnets, I can send 12 streams of data out. Okay. And these provide the coordinates that go into that topographical sound map that I talked about earlier. So as I move this around, we're sort of moving our ears around, if you like, inside the space. And it's a really wonderful instrument, and something that's really exciting for me about using the stacco and other instruments like it is that you have this sort of vast world of different electronic sounds that you can make or play with, but actually constraining it to something physical gives you, it sort of constrains the amount of sounds you can make, and therefore forces you to be a bit more creative with the sounds that you can make. And also you have fun little artifacts, like for example, if I let a magnet go, it will go whoop, 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 because it's being attracted to the magnet in the middle, so it will sort of roll around, and you can use that as part of your performance. So things like that. So do come and have a look at this afterwards. So yes, I don't have a name for this performance, but it's comprised of lots of different types of birds. In fact, that's the only thing it's comprised out of in different ways. And again, it's not intended to sound like normal birds, I'll put it that way. Hopefully the volume is okay. We test it out. Just to check. Okay.
Wow. I have not heard that before.
Good.
Very strange. I felt like I was lost in a jungle somewhere. It's quite uncanny. So I think that it's time now for us to end. And Rob, you said that people could come and have a look after. So is that okay?
Yeah, you're welcome to come and have a look. I've turned off the noise-making apparatus, but yeah, you're very welcome to come and have a look at the instrument if you'd like to. You probably can't see it from back there.
Brilliant. Okay, so do keep an eye out for the future events that we've got. Keep an eye out on our website for the future events that we've got coming up this term. So this is the start of many this year, but we're really thrilled to see so many of you, and we hope that you'll come again. Now that you know where you're coming, this is great. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks very much.